It's a strange thing we're seeing these days. So many incredibly talented young athletes are either burning out or getting seriously injured. We've got kids with skills that are just off the charts, but their bodies, they just can't keep up. So today, we're going to dig into a new way of thinking about long-term athlete development. It's a model that completely flips the script on how we train our youth. The goal? Building resilient athletes for life, not just for the next big game. All right, let's get into it.
And it really all boils down to this paradox, right? We're seeing kids who are more technically skilled at younger and younger ages than we've ever seen before. But, and this is the big but, their sport-specific skill is just skyrocketing past their physical development. It's creating this really dangerous imbalance. And honestly, that's where so many of the problems in youth sports today really begin.
So what we're talking about here is the very heart of this paradox. It's this growing gap, a gap between what the sport demands and what the athlete's body can actually provide. We're asking these developing bodies to handle skills they just aren't ready for. And that gap, well, it's getting wider and wider. And honestly, it's pretty scary.
Okay, just take a look at this. That red line, that's the demand of the sport. And you can see it's just shooting up, way above the blue line, which represents the athlete's actual physical capacity. We're talking about their tissue strength, their ability to move in all sorts of different ways. It just hasn't caught up. It's like we're asking them to perform like these miniature pros, but they just don't have the hardware or the recovery ability of an actual professional. It's a setup for failure.
So to really get a handle on this, we've got to talk about priorities. And the best way to picture what's going wrong is to think about a development pyramid. The problem is, what we're actually doing in most youth sports is we've taken that pyramid and flipped it completely upside down.
And boom, here it is. This image just says it all, doesn't it? On the left, that's what we should have, a huge, stable foundation built on health and basic movements. But then you look to the right, and that's the fragile reality for so many young athletes. It's this inverted pyramid balancing on a tiny little point. It's just waiting to topple over. It's an absolute recipe for disaster.
Okay, let's really break this down. In an ideal world, the bottom of that pyramid, the foundation, is all about rest, recovery, sleep, nutrition. Then you build on that with fundamental movements, sprinting, jumping, that kind of stuff. And winning games? That's the tiny little peak at the very top. But what's the reality? We've made win games the massive base we're trying to build everything on. And all that essential stuff, rest, recovery, it's just a tiny little afterthought at the very top. We've got it completely 100% backward.
All right, so how do we fix this thing? The answer, and this might surprise you, isn't about more complex drills or fancier technology. Not at all. It's about getting back to a philosophy of simplicity. It's about focusing on what actually builds a better, stronger foundation for the long run.
First principle, and this one is absolutely critical, consistency over intensity, every single time. Think about it. The athlete who shows up just once or twice a week but does it all year round, they're going to blow past the athlete who goes super hard 3 times a week but only for a couple of months. It's that slow, steady drip that eventually fills the bucket.
Number 2, we've got to embrace repetition. Here's the secret. Coaches get bored way before their athletes do. But true mastery, whether it's a perfect sprint start or a solid squat, that takes thousands and thousands of reps. What might feel totally monotonous to you as a coach is actually the secret sauce for the athlete. It's how they learn.
And this quote just hits it right on the head. You're bored? They aren't. It's such a powerful reminder for all of us coaches to kind of check our ego at the door. We need to focus on what the athlete needs for their development, not what we need to stay entertained. The basics, they just work.
And that brings us to principle number 3, smart integration. As a coach, you've got to remember you're just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. You have to be aware of the athlete's total load. We're talking school, family, other sports practices, everything. Your training session, it should be the cherry on top, something that adds value without just piling on more stress. And this leads to a simple, maybe even a hard, truth. You just can't accomplish everything you want. You can't be everything to the athlete, and you sure can't fix everything all at once. In fact, trying to do too much is pretty much the fastest way to get nothing done at all. You got to pick your battles and focus on what really, truly matters.
Okay, so that's the why, the philosophy behind it all. But what about the how? Let's get practical. What does this actually look like when you're in a training session with an athlete?
Well, the whole framework can be boiled down to one simple acronym, MOVE. That stands for movement quality, output, variability, and exposure. It's just a simple guide to make sure we're always focused on the right stuff, moving well, putting out power, trying different kinds of movement, and getting enough practice to actually build up their capacity.
And inside that MOVE framework, everything we do, everything, is built on two absolute pillars of athleticism: speed and strength. It's simple. If you can develop those two qualities, pretty much everything else in sports just gets a whole lot easier.
And if you had to pick just one, sprinting is priority number one. Why? Well, because sprinting is basically the most powerful training tool we have. It's a super intense, full-body activity that just lights up the central nervous system like nothing else can. It really is the tide that lifts all boats when you're talking about developing an athlete.
But look, we don't just throw kids out there and yell run fast. That's not how it works. Speed has to be taught in a logical progression. So we start at level 1, just building the basics, coordination. Then we move on to mastering how to run fast in a straight line. After that, we teach them how to slow down, stop, and change direction effectively. And only at the very end, at level 4, do we add in reacting to something, which is what true agility really is.
So what about that other pillar, strength? The goal here isn't to create a bunch of little bodybuilders, okay? It's about building what we call general physical preparedness. It's about improving their ability to create force and to create it quickly. And maybe most important of all, it's about building a body that's durable enough to handle whatever their sport throws at it.
This all leads to a final idea, and it might just be the most important one. The job of a truly great coach isn't to add more stuff, not more drills, not more complexity, not more talking. A lot of the time, the real job is to subtract.
And listen to this, because it's just so true. Most of the damage in athlete development comes from avoidable errors that pile up, often from trying to be too clever. It's profound, right? The biggest problems aren't from one big disaster. They're from a bunch of small, avoidable mistakes that just stack up, one on top of the other. And usually, it's because a coach was trying to get a little too fancy.
So what do those mistakes look like? Well, it's things like changing the plan every other week, or adding really complex exercises before they've even mastered the basics. It's chasing after the newest, shiniest piece of equipment instead of just solving the problem that's right in front of you. And maybe the biggest one of all? Talking so much that you forget to just watch, to see what the athlete's body is actually telling you.
Okay, so if that's what we shouldn't be doing, what's the alternative? What does a truly great coach actually do in this model?
This is it. This is the big takeaway. Good coaches win by subtraction. They don't add complexity. They strip away the noise. They stick to a few clear, simple priorities. They watch patiently, and they trust the process, letting the work do the teaching. When we build that pyramid the right way up, we're not just creating better athletes. We're helping to create healthier, more resilient human beings. And that, right there, is a win that lasts a lifetime.